Hello and welcome to New Game Plus. I'm Tim. I'm joined by Donald. How are you?
I am very much looking forward to the year 2017 in gaming. As in, for one, by that time, maybe Street Fighter V servers may be fixed, who knows? But also, recently we found out a couple of major games which won't be released in 2016. Like, Assassin's Creed will not have a 2016 release, the first time that we haven't seen an Assassin's Creed game for the past many years now.
Yeah.
And then we've also got Destiny 2, which everyone was expecting to be released in 2016. Nope, not anymore.
That definitely needs, the latter definitely needs the extra time. MMOs just take so much time to not only get through, but all the content patches that come out. You've got so much to do. Like, Destiny 2, I think it would be fairly early to bring
First
it on
off,
this
it's
year.
pronounced Destiny.
Destiny.
And second of all, I'm not quite sure about the content thing, given that one of the main criticisms to this day about Destiny is that even with its big patches, there's still not much to do in here, especially for its grand MMO aspirations.
But Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft really need to have a look at that because...
Oh yeah, definitely.
Take the year off, make sure that your new Assassin's Creed is not the same game that's been released the last 5 years in a row. So hopefully they take a fresh look at it and it comes back stronger for it. I want them to do it with Far Cry as well because they did 3 and 4 pretty close together. Now they've got Primal, so it's all the same, but now they've just gone back in time. I don't know.
Don't worry, there'll be Watch Dogs 2 for you to play with to get your open world needs in, or another The Crew game. Because your cars need to climb towers too.
Yes, they do. This week, we do have the big release, Street Fighter V. All Game Plus take a look at Street Fighter in general.
Yes, we also take some non-fighting game looks at another Crossing the Stream segment, as well as a new indie bundle.
Yes, but first up, we take a look at Garden Warfare 2.
Now, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare was one of my most anticipated titles from the years I did E3. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, fantastic concept, real tongue-in-cheek. And then when the game actually came out, it had everything that I really enjoyed about those kind of fun and wacky shooters. It was competitive, it was fun, the community, considering how long that game lasted with the multiplayer community, the community wasn't just dreadful, horrible, terrible people. So Garden Warfare 2 is coming out, and I figure, if there's ever a game to show Halo and COD how to make a true competitive shooter, it's Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. And bear with me 1 second. Out of Call of Duty, Halo 5, and Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, which one of those 3 games can you turn auto-aim off in? I'll give you a second. If you selected Call of Duty or Halo, you are wrong. Of course, it is Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. So, already, as far as I'm concerned, it's more of a competitive shooter than either of those other 2. But it's not even the competitive nature of this game that makes it great. It has that awesome kind of style that Plants vs. Zombies brings to the world. You know, the zombies and the plants have all got their unique abilities. Everyone has different tiers, different classes, and yet it also has the co-op modes, which the original game was really, really well known for, and they are still just a stack of fun. And the basic kind of menu screen is basically you play like Horde mode in a garden that's across the fence from where you start out. So you can play that straight away, or you go in the multiplayer modes where they have Rush, Kill Confirm, Domination, that kind of stuff. So they definitely have all of the modes that you've come to expect. They also have a great mode to start off with where there's only base skills. You only get a certain amount of health every time you die. So it really does make it easy to start the game, enjoy it, learn how to play it. But then when you want to become full tryhard on a game like Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, there's plenty to do in it. Genuinely, the best value shooter that's out there in the market. Hands down. It does split screen where Halo 5 does not. Best value shooter. If you can get past the aesthetic, best value shooter on the market. Now then, crossing the streams, where we look at the different kind of streaming services available in Australia.
So last time we looked at a couple of Netflix stuff.
Yes.
Now we're going over to Stan.
To Stan. And so I was sitting there and I thought, I really want to watch an Australian movie. You know, a good Australian movie.
There have been some good ones, and there have been some...
So it was up to 2000, there was some good Australian movies, and then for 10 years there was just utter garbage, and then the last few years have been good. So what I thought I'd do is I would watch He Died with a Falafel in His Hand, which is a book that was transferred into a movie by John Birmingham.
He wrote the original book, which is basically about people in share houses, and it's different sort of. There's a one guy who lives in like 45 different share houses.
It's a ridiculous number.
So the book has a lot of different stories about the different characters and the situations they get up to, whether that's stuff like their extreme poverty, trying to make rent, different scams, and they're just strange, unique characters they come across in these share houses.
And the difference between the book and the movie is the movie cuts off a lot of the people who they mention in the book, but it makes them
That's the nature of the...
but it makes a more cohesive narrative. Like in the same way that Trainspotting was very similar like that. Like it's a lot of kind of fat trimmed off from that, and it is that kind of like 90s chic. Like it embodies that kind of 80s 90s Australiana.
I mean, that's especially the music is a lot of that sort of stuff. But it's basically the Australian Garden State before Garden State.
Yes. Yep.
It's that I'm in my mid to late 20s, 30s.
The existential crisis.
What the fuck am I doing in my life? Why am I doing this? Like, why am I still living in this share house with these people?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I'm a writer who hasn't written anything.
Yeah. And so...
not relatable at all.
Yeah, I know, right? But look, it is that kind of... It worked. It was a great movie to watch. Plus, some of the lines and some of the stories are just fantastic.
My favourite one's the Nick Cave one, which is why does everyone listen to Nick Cave at 3 a.m. and try and kill themselves?
Yeah, which this seemed like a better option than doing that. So that's what I chose.
The music is great. And speaking of Nick Cave... I want to bring it up is he actually wrote my favourite Australian film, The Proposition.
So there you go.
Which I definitely recommend. But we did talk about another show a little while ago, Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yes.
Which is the continuation of the Evil Dead trilogy, 30 years later. We watched the first episode, which was directed by Sam Raimi.
It was very good.
We hadn't seen the rest of the season. Now we have.
I still enjoyed it. I thought it was very, very good. It does have its flat moments. I think the cast of characters was great. Even the random Australian backpackers was fine. Like, I don't think that thing. But I think of all of the things about it that really worked was the fact that the ending was so anti-Hollywood in what actually happens, and yet it just felt so right for that series.
Yeah, Ash sort of goes on a bit of an arc. He gets sort of friends and companions on the way, and he sort of stops being quite so selfish. And then towards the end, you're like, wow, you have totally become more selfish than you were originally, but it also feels very justified.
Yeah, he straight up blue-pilled.
I understand why he did that.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for season 2.
I agree.
Old Game Plus here, and today we're talking about the influence of Street Fighter 2, which had an anniversary the other day, on game playing and games in the arcade.
And it was a big change to the arcade because early days in the arcades you used to take your 20-cent pieces and you go around, you play. You had your favourites, but you play a lot of different games, a bit like a buffet.
Yeah.
And then you'd have co-op games, Double Dragon, things like that, where you'd play with each other. Street Fighter was a fundamental change to how games were played.
Yes, you weren't playing with each other after Street Fighter came. You were playing against each other. You were proving how good you were at the game and how good you were against your peers. And that was a fundamental change in gaming because to prove how good you were at a game, you would have to say, that's my high score there on the screen. But from now on, you had to face someone face-to-face, live, and prove how good you were.
And you'd stay on the arcade machine, a bit like a pool table in a pub. So the person who was winning got to stay. And it made it quite intense competition in most places.
And we've been competing in games ever since, shooting, racing, and beating each other to a pulp ever since.
Now, we'd like to get views from everybody else in the show, what they played, and because we're talking fighting, let's do a montage.
The first time I ran into a Street Fighter arcade machine was when Mum dragged me to the shops, and it was just standing there as an oasis away from boredom. Between the photo shop and the fruit vendor, I played as Blanka, I spammed the punch button, and that pretty much sums up my style with fighting games to this day.
So my Street Fighter 2 experience was limited in the fact that the local milk bar only had Mortal Kombat. However, I was one of the first kids to figure out that you could sweep out of Blanka's electricity, which made me a god. However, the game that I did play a lot of in the Street Fighter universe is Street Fighter 3. So I definitely thank Street Fighter 2 for existing, because I wouldn't have that, or Marvel vs. Capcom, or Super Puzzle Fighter, or Street Fighter. You get what I'm saying.
My first experience with Street Fighter 2 was the Game Boy port, and unfortunately having two face buttons, I wasn't exactly open to the realm of depth and possibility with the combo system. Immediately afterwards, I came across a cabinet, an arcade cabinet of Hyper Fighting with the 6-button layout. I was surely confused at first, but I had so much fun and so much wonderful memories relearning the game.
So it was 1991, and you gotta remember that back then, most games had sprites which were that big. And then you have Street Fighter 2 which had sprites which were that big. And then, Hadouken, Shoryuken, what are they saying? This game is awesome.
My first experience with Street Fighter 2 was when I went into my old arcade and my favourite cab, which was the Double Dragon one, had been replaced by Street Fighter 2, and I did not like that. My favourite character once I started to play Street Fighter 2 happened to be Chun-Li, and I loved her move where she would grab people out of the air and throw them to the ground.
I guess my first interaction with Street Fighter would probably be X-Men versus Street Fighter. It wasn't actually a Street Fighter game by itself, but I was young, I had my friend's PS1, I think we only had one controller. It was before the time when I actually knew how to do moves, I was just mashing. I think it was only one controller, but I stole it off him.
And that was some of the crew's view on their first time with Street Fighter, and you always remember your first time.
Yes, and if you want to see more Street Fighter 2 history and a little bit more, you can check out our video about that online.
It's a new year, it's a new indie bundle, let's go.
I knew it. No. Size matters.
How big is it?
If I know how big it is, I can face it. I can size it up.
And it's quite small at this point, but unfortunately the size isn't terribly important. Any recurrence means the chemotherapy has failed. This is a tragedy.
First up, we have That Dragon Cancer from Numinous Games, but really it comes from Ryan and Amy Green, whose son Joel Green was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer when he was 12 months old. This game is a visual journey through the experiences and emotions that the Green family felt during their son's treatment. And as you'd expect for a game all about kid cancer, there are some absolutely harrowing moments in this game. One particular sequence when Joel is in hospital and dehydrated and won't stop crying it just floored me. And this game is deeply personal, to the point where it actually uses audio excerpts from the family's home video recordings. And the game goes through the nuances and the sort of mundanities of treatment as well, including the sort of dread and monotony of a hospital stay, and it pays particular attention to the role that God and faith played in Ryan and Amy's life. The way that the two react differently to this particular element, it's fascinating to behold. Unfortunately though, this game isn't without its flaws. It could have used more visual cues to determine what's interactive and how to move forward, and further, it doesn't do the best job in actually chronicling Joel's cancer. It plays too much metaphor, and as a result, it doesn't have that context to really have it hit home. Indeed, it kind of feels like you have to do some background research before you play this game. But still, as a standalone project, That Dragon Cancer is still affecting and emotional and poignant and everything you'd expect. You know already if this game isn't for you, but if it is, then it's very likely that you will still be thinking about this game for a while.
So, to summarize, we are not allowed here after dark, the town is shut down, and we, the Kamina High junior class, have come to commit improper acts.
Improper acts. All right.
Improper acts? What does that even mean? Soaping windows?
Yeah, I don't think that'll get us tossed in the stockade.
No. But maybe the fact that I brought a whole crap ton of drugs will.
Oh, well.
Oh God, of course you did.
Up next we have Oxenfree from Night School Studio. You play as Alex, as you and a bunch of fellow high schoolers decide to ferry it over to an abandoned island to get drunk and play Truth or Dare, only to inadvertently open a supernatural rift. So, equipped with a radio that can tune into the poltergeist, you have to explore this island and its ghostly peril to try to save your friends and get to the bottom of its perilous past. Now, this game was developed by former Telltale Games employees, so naturally dialogue plays a big part here. You're pretty much in near constant conversation with your friends, and of course you can choose how these conversations go, and these will have an impact on how your relationships end up with your friends. It's a well integrated dialogue system, and it absolutely lets the characterization shine. Even though I actually didn't like many of the characters in this game, I was still deeply invested in them and their backstories. Yes, even Ren, your really dweeby best friend. And just as compelling are the supernatural trappings. When the game goes all crazy, when it plays with time and reality, it gets super interesting and it just looks great as well. And in between these sequences is a soundtrack by Scientific, which is already an early contender for Best Gaming Soundtrack of 2016. It does so much great in its first 2 acts, and then it just ends. The character threads that you've been developing for hours are just tied up too quickly and conveniently. And the ending and the mystery actually almost says too much about the island. But in spite of this, Oxenfree, for the first 2/3 anyway, is a great little adventure game filled with great characters and a nice supernatural bent to things. That does it for this edition of the Indie Bundle. There are still plenty more awesome indie games out there, and we will check them out in due course.
The King of Fighters 14. The King of Fighters 14.
Okay, I have to take umbrage with this trailer, Tim, because they promised 50 whole fighters. There are only 15 of them in there.
I wonder what the other 35 are called, if they're going to be like called Bob or Randall or I don't know.
Kin, kind.
Yes. Too many king names in there. But obviously we're not very in with the King of Fighters. There's lots of guys here that are very keen for it, and they say that...
Keen of fighters.
Oh my God. And they're excited about bringing 3D models into King of Fighters because it's always been a 2D series like Street Fighter used to be.
Like it almost seemed like a charming anachronism, like when in the world of Street Fighter 4 with its 3D, then even Guilty Gear Xrd with its 2D look that became 3D.
Yeah.
Then something like to have King of Fighters here as just this still sprite-filled thing was kind of heartening. We still have the anime fighters, I guess.
Yes, that's true. But in like all the fighters that are coming up, this is one of the big ones. It's not Tekken, it's not Street Fighter, but I guess if there's no Marvel vs. Capcom 4, then this is probably the next.
But it's also interesting, like to see like the state of play of fighting games in 2016, given that like Tekken is still kind of there, but not really, as in they're trying to push Pokken tournaments out of all games. Yeah. Street Fighter 5 is getting rejuvenated with its thing, but King of Fighters, it's sort of fallen by the wayside as well. So it'd be interesting to see if this game actually revives that particular community of fighters.
Now, Cody, I think it's pointless doing a review of Street Fighter V this early.
It'll V-trigger a lot of people.
Yeah, but I figured let's give them the 3 reasons why I think it's too early, right? Number 1 is that there is really no single-player content to speak of.
That is a bit of the truth as well. I mean, when it all comes down to it, a lot of people don't play fighting games for the single player component. I know a lot of people are really kind of uppity about how there's very lacks of story modes and things like that. Survival mode is a completely different kettle of fish.
Which
as well.
which is not a normal thing to see. Like I can't remember the last Street Fighter game that had survival in it. Did the Ultra?
Yeah, but
update
it was very incidental.
Yeah. And so they're planning to release larger expansions of story mode, stuff like that in June. So if you are coming into it with the expectation that you don't have friends who you play locally with or play online with, then perhaps maybe June's the time to wait for. The other one I would say is that, as we speak, the servers aren't great. So if you've got people you can link up with, it's going to be far better than like relying on random matchmaking.
So when it comes to online gaming as well, for a game to come out for its first few days to have complete, 100% connectivity, who would have thought an online game at this day and age running completely fine? It's just another one of those things. There's so many people jumping on, and after a few days of server maintenance, and as well as people jumping on and kind of jumping out, there's going to be a lot more smoother server infrastructure.
But I mean, at this point, like considering they've had Destiny, Diablo, however many examples, just buy too many servers for once. Just buy an extra 10. You know what I mean? Like, of what you need. And then you can always sell them or, like, turn them off.
Just go Oprah in that arse.
Exactly, And you get a server, and you get a server.
Exactly.
So that's probably the other big consideration. But I think probably the thing that I think stops me the most from wanting to give a definitive opinion on it is that the game is so different from 4. Like, there are so many elements that have come from basically all the other Street Fighter games that they've kind of brought back into this. So
you still have your 6-button layout and everything that's very familiar, especially a lot of the characters have their special attacks and a little bit different. But the character diversity, the move diversity is going to kind of, I guess, take a little while to get used to. As well as some of the V triggers, V skills, V reversals. There's all these different systems that work really well with each other that do need a bit more time in the oven.
And I think that's probably the difference here is that in Street Fighter 4, it was all about learning your focus attack dash cancel. It was all about
B&B's, bread and butter combos.
Absolutely, all that. This neutral game, it is so much more important that you learn the basics of your character and the basics of your spacing, things like that.
There's a lot more emphasis on mind games where you can win or lose a fight depending on how well you read your opponent and play your opponent to your advantage.
Plus, in one of probably the biggest things I've enjoyed about a fighting game in a long time, you can't chip people out anymore.
Yes.
So
no shitty people throwing Hadoukens for meaty chip KOs. It's so much better because you have to go in, read your opponent, and really earn that KO.
So, Street Fighter V, it's a great game so far, but these are the things you need to consider before you pick it up. We'll give you some full coverage later on as well, plus I'm sure we'll stream it at some point.
We're going to be playing a crap ton of it, so there's no doubting there.
Now, obviously, it's still early days for Street Fighter V, and it is very frustrating when you're trying to play a single-player component of the game and you keep getting kicked to the main menu when the servers go down.
What do you mean? The training menu is so stable.
Yes.
So stable.
Yes. But we had learnt this from the beta, and it's good that it's finally out. We can start practicing our mains. I always played Ken, but he looks very weird in this game.
It's the eyes, isn't it? It's the come the eyes that he has. But I know, I'm someone who absolutely sucks at Street Fighter. I've got maybe a 30% strike rate on actually pulling off a Hadouken. So to come to this game with pretty much no skill level, then suddenly just run into not that many options to improve myself. So the tutorials are absolutely threadbare. The single player story components are pretty much non-existent. The only way that I can actually get better is by just grinding away in the training mode or getting my ass whooped in the online component, which I have done very, very often.
Yes, I found that as well. When I was queuing up in ranked, I'd get matched up against people that knew what they were doing, and that's a struggle. That's really a struggle. So
maybe a button mashers lobby, please.
Yes,
but it was also it's also a sign of the times when the servers just constantly breaking, especially on launch day. Like people like them in Street Fighter, and the servers as we're recording, they're starting to get better.
Yeah.
As in, I can still connect. I can actually connect to matches now and lose very vigorously.
Yes.
But
it's a sign of good things to come. Like with all the content updates coming out, I think they probably should have said, "Hey, we're just releasing like the multiplayer bit for people to get into it." But if you wanted to wait for the single player stuff, probably wait till
they sort of have, but you would have had to pay attention to the messaging. It's it's a fighting game as a service, which is kind of like what Killer Instinct did.
But that's it for this week. So visit our website, www.newgameplus.tv.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/NewGamePlusTV.
Follow our Twitter and Instagram at NewGamePlusTV.
And follow us on YouTube and Twitch. We are New Game Plus TV.
Thank you, Donald.
Thank you, Tim.
We'll see you guys next week.